You won't believe what I'm about to tell you. I'm writing this in the comfort of my own porch swing, watching climbing roses sway on the very trellis that almost cost my wife her shoulder and nearly started a war in Pine Creek Estates. My name is Jack Morrison. 25 years as a U.S. Navy SEAL. Multiple combat tours. Bronze Star with V. The kind of resume that makes people whisper when I walk into a room. All I wanted after retirement was silence. A lake to fish. A garage big enough for my woodworking bench. A place where my wife Sarah could grow her medicinal herbs. And finally breathe after decades of holding my broken pieces together through the nightmares and the long absences. We thought we'd found it in Pine Creek Estates. Quiet streets, mature trees, good schools nearby. The realtor called it tight-knit. We should have asked who was doing the knitting. The first 6 months were perfect. I rebuilt my soul one board at a time, crafting a rose trellis for our 25th anniversary. Sarah cried when I unveiled it. Real tears, the kind you earn after a quarter century of standing by a man who sometimes came home less human than when he left. 3 days later, the knock came. A man in his mid-30s, built like a CrossFit coach who'd never seen real violence, stood on my doorstep wearing a black polo with the Pine Creek HOA logo stretched across his chest. Clipboard, smirk, sunglasses indoors. Mr. Morrison? Chad Wilson, compliance officer. Your garden structure violates Regulation 27B, Section 4. External modifications require pre-approval by the Architectural Review Committee. $500 citation. Remove it in 48 hours, or the fine doubles daily. I blinked once. Slow, deliberate, the way you do when you're deciding whether a threat is worth neutralizing. We weren't told about pre-approval. Happy to submit retroactively. There is no retroactive process. Rules are rules. He slapped the notice into my palm and strutted back to his HOA-branded Tahoe, like he just won a firefight. That night, our neighbor Mike Johnson, retired detective, 20 years on the job, leaned over the fence. You've met King Chad and Queen Karen, he muttered. Be careful, Jack. They forced 3 families out in the last 18 months. This place is run like a protection racket, with landscaping fines. Something switched on inside me. The same cold, analytical calm that used to settle over me before a direct action mission. Why would an HOA want high turnover? Stable neighborhoods maintain value. Aggressive enforcement that drives people away is illogical. In my experience, when something doesn't add up, money is usually the discrepancy. I requested a board meeting. Appeal denied. Then came 5 new violations in a single week. Mailbox color, same as when we bought the house. Lawn half an inch too tall. Trash cans visible for 37 seconds while wheeling to the curb. Unauthorized vegetation, Sarah's medicinal herbs, and my personal favorite, creating a nuisance with unsanctioned youth gatherings, my free self-defense classes for neighborhood kids. Total fines, north of $2,000 in 14 days. That wasn't enforcement. That was a shakedown. Sarah looked at the stack of pink citations and said quietly, "This isn't right, Jack. We can't let them do this to everyone else." I felt the old calm settle deeper. Looks like retirement's over. Babe, one last operation. The board meeting was held in the clubhouse like a tribunal. 5 board members behind a table. Karen Matthews center stage. Late 50s, salon blonde, diamonds flashing under recessed lighting. Treasurer Doug Peterson to her right. Thin, nervous, eyes darting every time money was mentioned. I brought photographs of identical trellises in half the neighborhood, including one in Karen's own backyard, plus printouts of suspiciously round-numbered consulting fees in the HOA financials. Karen's smile never reached her eyes. We're not here to discuss association finances, Mr. Morrison. Comply or face consequences. But I saw it. A flicker of panic in Doug's face when I said the word finances. Target acquired. A week later, the patrols intensified. Chad photographing through windows. Hand resting on a taser he had no business carrying. I watched in the way I once watched sentries outside a Taliban compound, cataloging patterns, weaknesses, ego. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Sarah came home exhausted from a brutal ER shift. lost a 16-year-old car crash victim. She decided the fight wasn't worth more stress and started dismantling the trellis herself. I was in the garage when I heard the shout, then her cry of pain. I cleared the distance in seconds. Sarah on the ground, clutching her shoulder. Chad and 2 goons standing over her. She refused a compliance inspection. Chad sneered. "We have authority under Section 12. Sarah's voice was tight with agony, but clinically precise. Dislocated shoulder. Possible rotator cuff tear. My vision tunneled the way it did in Fallujah when an RPG took out the truck in front of me. 3 unarmored targets. Primary aggressor front and center. In another life, Chad would already be unconscious with a crushed larynx. Instead, I helped my wife stand, supporting her weight like she was made of glass. "You just made a very serious mistake," I said, soft enough that only he heard the promise in it. Our neighbor Rebecca was already recording. I told Mike to call the police. 20 minutes later, Officer Benson arrived. Lazy handshake with Chad. Cursory questions. Refusal to take a report. Suggested Sarah had tripped. As we drove to the ER, Sarah's arm in a makeshift sling, I made the decision that turned a personal grievance into a campaign. They saw a graying retired couple they could intimidate. They had no idea they'd just assaulted a SEAL's wife. In the teams, we had a saying. The most dangerous man in the world is the one with nothing left to lose and the training to take everything from you. Phase 1 had just begun. The next morning, I sat in Mike Johnson's home office, surrounded by decades of quiet rage in manila folders. Mike slid a thick file across the desk. I've been collecting this for years. Never had the leverage to use it. Inside, complaints, financial statements, whispers. Karen's husband died 3 years ago. Faulty carbon monoxide detector in the garage. Investigation handled personally by Officer Benson. Suddenly, Karen had money from Mercedes and Dior. Doug Peterson quietly fired from First National Bank for accounting irregularities. Chad sealed domestic violence jacket that vanished the day he was hired as enforcement. Jackpot. Sarah, shoulder in a sling. Pain meds barely touching the fire. Called in a favor. A young lawyer named Sam Wilson, former Army Ranger, owed her his life after a motorcycle wreck. He showed up that night, refused payment, and spent 6 hours dissecting the HOA bylaws and state law like it was an enemy compound. 6 felony-level violations minimum. He concluded, problem is, most people roll over because legal fees outpace the fines. I smiled for the first time in days. Lucky for us, I have time, training, and a wife they just put in a sling. We built a war room in our dining room. Whiteboard, string, photos, the works. Every unapproved structure in the neighborhood got photographed. Every financial request under state disclosure law got filed. 12 in 1 week. I attended every open meeting with a legal recorder. Residents started talking. An elderly widow fined for a wheelchair ramp. A Jewish family cited for excessive holiday lighting because they added a menorah. A disabled little girl's swing set suddenly non-compliant. Pattern confirmed. Selective enforcement is illegal, and we had the receipts. Sarah, stubborn as ever, went back to work light duty. Second day on the job, Chad rolled into her ER. Motorcycle wreck, road rash, fractured wrist. She treated him like any other patient. Explained care instructions. Adjusted his floor with gentle hands. He stared at her like she was an alien. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Because that's my job," she said. "And because dignity isn't something you withhold just because someone else did." Something flickered behind his eyes. A hairline crack in the armor. Meanwhile, Rebecca, Mike's wife and local investigative reporter, started pulling threads. Fake landscaping company owned by Karen's sister. Security consulting paid to Doug's unemployed son. 50 grand in administrative expenses with no receipts. The web was bigger than petty tyranny. It was embezzlement wearing a visor and a clipboard. Karen's response? Escalate. Daily violation notices. Chad peering through windows. Doug cornered me in the driveway with a friendly offer. Drop everything. Consider selling. All fines waived. I looked him dead in the eye. That sounds like extortion, Doug. I wonder how the state regulator would classify it. His mask slipped. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," I said, "that's your problem." Sam secured a temporary restraining order against surprise inspections. Rebecca collected 15 sworn statements. An anonymous former HOA accountant emailed bank records showing a secret account controlled by Karen and Doug. They panicked, called an emergency meeting to slap a $2,000 special assessment on every home for legal defense. I stood up in that meeting and laid out chapter and verse. The embezzlement, the selective enforcement, the assault on my wife. The vote failed 68-4. Karen stormed out. The crack became a fracture. That night our security cameras caught Chad and 2 others trying to hop our back fence. Officer Benson showed up, dismissed it as boys being boys. We had a county sheriff's deputy, former Marine, waiting 5 minutes behind him. Conflicting reports went on file. Benson was officially on notice. 2 days later, Chad showed up at the hospital again, this time not as a patient. Thinly veiled threat about accidents happening to empty houses. Sarah looked him in the eye. "That sounded like a threat, Mr. Wilson. As a mandatory reporter, I'm required to call security and file a police report. Shall we clarify your statement?" He left fast. Then came the tip from the most unlikely source imaginable. "Chad, yes, Chad, called me at 1 a.m. Look, I don't like you, but this went too far. Tomorrow night Benson is going to plant drugs in your truck, then discover them on an anonymous tip." I asked the only question that mattered. "Why tell me?" A long pause. "Your wife treated me like a human being when I gave her every reason not to, and I'm tired of being their dog." The hunter just handed me his leash. We didn't dodge the trap. We turned it into a kill box. Hidden 4K cameras in the bed of my truck, under the house eaves, inside a fake sprinkler head. Motion activated, cloud backup, time stamped. 2:17 a.m. Officer Benson, off-duty, plain clothes, gloves, slips a small package under my driver's seat. 5:40 a.m. Benson back in uniform. Anonymous tip, lights swirling. I played dumb. Gave consent to search. Watched his smirk bloom as he pulled out the package. Then die when he opened it and found 2 pounds of Domino sugar. "I don't understand," he muttered. "No mistake, officer," I said calmly. "Just different contents than you planted at 0217. I have high-def video from 4 angles. Copies already with my attorney, the DA, and the chief, who's en route. The second unit, on scene, wasn't on it. His face when the pieces clicked was pure gold. Benson was cuffed in my driveway before sunrise. Word spread through Pine Creek like wildfire on dry grass. Karen and Doug called another emergency closed-door meeting. 3rd violation of Florida's Sunshine Law in a month. Sam had a court order in the process, server's hand before they finished coffee. When Karen tried to lock the doors anyway, 35 residents were already outside her house with signs. Local news vans rolled up. Doug videoed Doug try to rabbit out the back, while Mike Johnson blocked the gate with a pleasant, "Going somewhere." The recording from their previous secret meeting, legally obtained, went to the district attorney that afternoon. Clear discussion of fabricating violations, planting evidence, and using HOA funds for personal expenses. Search warrants hit all 3 homes the next morning. They found everything. Offshore accounts, fake invoices, the secret ledger. Over $250,000 missing. Karen's Botox, Doug's gambling debts, private school tuition, a condo in Aruba, all paid for by landscaping fines and special assessments. Arrest day was almost anticlimactic. I stood on my porch drinking coffee as Karen was walked out in cuffs, still trying to give orders to the deputies. Neighbors watched in complete silence. When she spotted me, something in her face collapsed. At booking, the sergeant supposedly told her, "Lady, you picked the wrong retiree to mess with. That's a Team 6 SEAL you pushed down the stairs." Her reply, "Morrison's a SEAL? Bronze star with V. You're lucky he used paperwork instead of knife." Rebecca's expose hit the front page the next day. National pickup within 48 hours. Retired Navy SEAL dismantles corrupt HOA empire. The fallout was beautiful. New interim board elected that week. Fees cut 30%. maintenance actually started happening. The gaudy Pine Creek Estates, a premier community sign came down, replaced with simple letters. Pine Creek, where neighbors become friends. Chad took a plea, got probation and 500 hours community service at the Veteran Center. 6 months later, he asked if he could help coach the kids' self-defense class. Said he'd learned more about real strength from the guys, missing limbs than he ever did wearing a tactical polo and a taser. Karen got 4 years. Doug got 3. Benson lost his badge, his pension, and 2 years of freedom. 6 months after the arrests, Sarah and I sat on the same porch swing where this all began. The trellis was covered in roses. Kids laughed in the street without fear of citation. Neighbors waved instead of looking away. Mike and Rebecca brought wine to celebrate the 6-month anniversary of the revolution. Rebecca raised her glass. Did you ever think retirement would look like this? I looked at Sarah, shoulder healed, eyes bright again, and at the community that had finally become the haven we'd paid for. In the teams, we had a saying, I told them the only easy day was yesterday. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. Funny thing is, Karen thought she was building a kingdom. Instead, she gave us a village. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to blink. And sometimes that person has spent 25 years learning exactly how to make evil regret waking up that morning. The roses on the trellis have never looked better.